Hello! This week we are going to be learning about powers of 10 and negative powers of 10. So by the end of the week, I will be able to determine positive and negative powers of 10 in the following forms: whole number or fraction, 10 to the power of a number, and then expanded form. Now for this skill, you do get a calculator. So you can use this calculator and you would type in 10. So you would click 10. So you would type in 10. Then you would click the AB button, which is how we get an exponent. And that would give us the ability to put in any exponent. So I could put in 5, or I could hit the subtraction button first, and that would give me -5. So I could type in 10 AB 5 or 10 AB -5. Or I could do -3, or I could do -2, -1, 0. So you do get a calculator on this skill. All right, positive exponents. So if I have a positive exponent, that means that I have a large number and that I'm going to move the decimal to the right. So I have a large number. I will move the decimal to the right. If I have a negative exponent, this means I have a tiny number. And when we say tiny, we're not talking about the number of decimal places that I have. We're talking about like something that's really small, microscopic. So maybe an amoeba or maybe a human cell. So things that are super small. And for these, I will move the decimal to the left. Now, a negative exponent does not make the answer negative. Oops, sorry. So it does not make the answer negative, and this is so important. Please write this. I want you to highlight this because that is the most common mistake that students make with these, is that they think that a negative exponent means that their answer is negative, but it doesn't. It just means that it's a really small, tiny number. So it's a fraction. It's a part of a whole. All right, so go ahead and write this in your notes. So I'm going to highlight this right here too. A negative exponent does not make the answer negative. Go ahead and pause it here if you're still writing. So let's take a look here. So if I have a positive exponent, I'm going to move the decimal to the right. So I'm going to move the decimal to the right. So right now, there's no decimal there. So if I have no decimal, it will always be at the end of the number. So here's my decimal. So that means if I have, say I have 10 to the 4th power, I'm going to move the decimal 4 places to the right because that's what my exponent is. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in each of these spaces, I'm going to add in zeros. So my number that I have is going to be 10,000. So my number is 10,000. If I have a negative exponent, I move the decimal to the left. And I already wrote this on my notes on the last screen, so you shouldn't need to write that part again. So I still have my decimal in the same place. If there isn't one, it's always at the end of the number. So now I have 10 to the negative fourth. So I'm going to move the decimal to the left. That negative number means that I have a small number that I'm working with. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So my decimal is going to end up right here. So I'm going to fill in each of these spots with a 0. So let me rewrite that. I'm going to put a decimal. And now the proper way to write this number is to always put a 0 out in front. So this is a large number, and this is a tiny or a small number. It's less than 1. So go ahead and pause the recording here if you need to so that you can get these two examples in your notes. All right. You need to make sure that you're adding this to your notes. This is so important. So if I have a negative exponent, this negative exponent again means that I have a tiny number. It's a fraction. So I was recently told this little trick to help you remember it. When you have a negative exponent, it says because you have a negative attitude, you can go to the basement. So this negative exponent, the 10, is going to go downstairs. So 10 to the negative first becomes 1/10. 10 to the negative first becomes 1/10. So if I have 10 to the negative second, that means that I just have 2 of these. So make sure that this is in your notes because this is so important. And then pause the recording here if you need to. And now what we're going to do is we are just going to fill in this chart. So we're going to fill in the chart. All right, so 10 to the negative 3, there is no fraction form. The expanded form would be 10 times 10 times 10. That 3 tells me that I have 3 10s that I'm multiplying. And the standard form for that would be 1,000. Let me see. I want to make that a little bit bigger for you. All right, so for the next one, I have 2 10s that I'm multiplying. So that would be 10 times 10. 10 times 10 would be 100. And again, if I was, well, we'll talk about the decimals in a minute. 10 to the first, I have 1 10. So that's just 10. The next one, notice I have a 0. I have 0 10s. So it's just 1 because I'm not moving the decimal at all. All right, 10 to the negative first. So again, remember, this is where I have my fraction. So I'm going to insert a fraction here. So this is my 1/10. I have 1/10. The expanded form is just 1/10. I only have one of them. And then the decimal or the standard form is 0.1. I moved the decimal one place to the left. So it went from here to before the 1. Now, 10 to the negative second, I have 2 1/10ths. So I have 1/10 times 1/10. That would be the expanded form. So I'm going to put that over here. And the fraction form would be, I have 2 options for this fraction form. I can write 1 over 10 to the second power might have to handwrite this in. Okay, there we go. 1 over 10 to the second power. So I just took away that negative and I turned it into a fraction, which this is also equal to. This is also equal to 1 over 100. So 1 over 10 to the second would be the same thing as 1 over 100. And the standard form would be 0.01. Now I move the decimal 2 places. 1, 1, 2. And then for the next one, so instead of having a 2 in the exponent, I have a 3. And here I'm going to add that extra 0. Instead of multiplying 2 1/10ths, I'm going to be multiplying 3 1/10ths. So I have 3 1/10ths, and now this is going to be 0.001. So let's go ahead, let me draw on this now. So for 10 to the third, the decimal was after the 1, and I went 1, 2, 3. 10 to the second, the decimal was after the 1, I went 1, 2. The next one, the decimal was after the 1, I went 1. The next one, the decimal was after the 1, and I went 0 spaces. 10 to the 0 powers, just 1. 10 to the negative first, so the decimal was after the 1, and I just moved it 1 place to the left because I have that negative exponent. The next one, 10 to the negative second, I moved it 2 places to the left. The next one, if I put the decimal after the 1, I moved it 3 places to the left. All right, so make sure that this chart is in your notes. And I'll give you just a moment to get that in your notes. All right, so make sure that you have all this in your notes. Again, a negative exponent does not make the answer negative. Notice that there are no negatives on this chart anywhere. Other than exponents, notice the only things that you see are 1s and 0s. Okay, so you don't see that this makes it 20 right here. No, it's 10 times 10 or 100. So just make sure this chart's in your notes so that you can reference it all week. And whenever we're doing anything with exponents, you can always go back to this. And pause the recording again if you need to. All right, and finally, go ahead and tell me, what is your level of understanding for this topic? I really don't get this. I need extra help. Level 2, I think I can do this on my own, but I'm not sure. Level 3, I am confident that I can do this on my own. And level 4, I definitely can do this. I can also teach others. All right, that's it for Powers of 10. I hope you have a great day.